I do have some comments I want to make. Good. I like the way you started with an activity. There's the layout of their slides. Their slides were set up quite well. One of the strong points of the presentation. There are many strong points, but the slides, again, the simplicity of it, and I like the way many times, especially in Evan's portion of the presentation, where she would have a slide with one quote or one idea on it, and then she would use that to sort of run the discussion. And I even mentioned before, one of the side benefits of that is the fact that when you have simple and not too much content, then people are able to connect ideas better. We saw the example with David, but not just David, there were many of you who were coming up with thoughts and connections because your brain wasn't overloaded with too much data. So even though there was a lot of content tonight, it was presented in a way that made it sort of user-friendly, in the sense that not too much of it was given to us at once. So that was very, very powerful. The expectations set up early with the first slide, where they said this is what we're going to do, and just had an overall outline. That was well done, gave all the pieces at the beginning. Good to start with an activity and get everybody into the idea of what was going on, and so forth. Let me just, I'm going to try to flip through and not go over all of these, but there's a few key things I do want to touch on. Let me just have a look here. This is what I said. This is one of the drawbacks of the fact that I haven't had any chance to prepare anything, but I have to look at this and think for a moment about what I need to say and what I don't need to say. Just one of the things you need to be a little wary of is a couple of times there were comments made about, the example, talking about Piaget, and the comment was made, I'm really not going to talk about this too much. I wouldn't make comments like that. Just, if you're not going to talk about something too much, just don't talk about it too much. That's okay. Because what happens, I'll tell you what happens, is the people listening, when you say I'm not going to talk about this too much, people listening assume, well, what do they assume? Anybody? What's the assumption you make?
You know about it.
Pardon? Well, yeah, you could assume that, okay, but that's not necessarily a big deal if you assume the person doesn't know a lot. Maybe they don't want to go over it because they don't know so much about it. Possibly true, but there's something else that's more of a concern. Yes? Yes. Why would you stop listening? Very good. Why would you stop listening? Because if they say, I'm not going to talk about it very much, what does it mean? It's not important. Exactly. Whereas in fact, it's probably actually very important, but you're only going to touch on it briefly because it's not a key element, but you want to make sure people are aware of it. So what you can do is, instead of saying, I'm not going to talk about this very much, is you can say, it's important to understand this as background to our presentation. And then you just go into it briefly, and then they know why you're going into it briefly. It's only background, right? Okay? So rather than using, that's kind of a bit of a negative statement. You want to be careful, as I mentioned before, about making negative statements. They can often be dangerous. One of the things that I noticed was Evan had the slides printed out, which was actually good. And in actual fact, I was a bit concerned about this at first, in that Evan didn't really have many notes. But I realized, and this is where, guys, you have to be sensitive to differences in style. Because at first I was a bit concerned that Evan just had the slides on her paper and nothing else. And I thought she might get tripped up, but she didn't. Evan had the confidence to understand that what she was up there, and she had the presentation pretty much memorized all the way through. Not even memorized in terms of, this is exact word for word, like, I'll say this. I'm not talking about memorized like that. I'm talking about she knew the sequence, knew what she wanted to say, knew where she wanted to get you guys involved and work. Okay? But sister, I have to be honest, your confidence level is not quite to where you don't need cards. Okay? And you gotta know your own style. Okay? If you need cards, use them. This is fine, I've said that before. Micah used cards last week, Gaia used cards last week, that's fine. Okay? If you need cards to get you through the presentation, use them. Okay? What you don't want to do is put yourself in a situation where you need them and you don't have them. Okay? Because you're hurting yourself a little bit there. And I think it was kind of a confidence thing. You weren't quite as confident as and maybe you need to practice a little more. But I would have had some cards handy. Okay? I think the cards would have helped you. Okay? Helped you get through it. So it's not, I don't see it as a crutch. Well, maybe it is a crutch. You say, what's a crutch? It means it's a supporter. It's okay. So what? So it's a crutch. Use it. No problem. Okay? President John F. Kennedy, true story. Okay? One of the guys who wrote, I've been reading a book by a guy that was his Secretary of State for quite a while and wrote some of his speeches. Fantastic book. But one of the things he says about John F. Kennedy, who was actually considered, by the way, one of the best speakers of the last century. And that would be a statement that I'd be fairly safe making, whether you liked him as president or not. People thought he was a magnificent speaker. John F. Kennedy never memorized a speech. Never memorized a speech. And if you watch you can go on YouTube and you can pull up John F. Kennedy, because a lot of people love the guy, and there's tons of his speeches on YouTube. You'll see he's up there at the podium, but he's got his papers. The guy never spoke without his papers in front of him. And when you notice, he's connecting with people, he's talking, he's looking at the audience, but he looks down, he's looking down at his paper, where am I? Got this, okay, I gotta say this. He's looking down at his paper. And there's times when he actually reads segments. When it's really important, he actually reads it right off the paper. And this is a guy that is known as one of the best speakers of the last 150 years or so. So, if Kennedy can do it, you guys can do it. Okay? Nobody's expecting you to be better speakers than John F. Kennedy. So if he used his notes, and he did, you guys can use your notes. Use them. Okay? If you feel you can do it, like I said, Evan didn't need them. That's fine. Okay? Some people need them, some don't. Know your own style and act according to it. Okay? What else? As I say, there's great connections, great flow, I thought, throughout the presentation. Sister, a couple of times you did a little bit of rambling, where you were kind of going, you weren't sure what you wanted to say next. You got a little confused sometimes where you were with the slides, and Evan kind of helped you out a bit. And that's okay, but it's, you maybe just need to practice it a little bit more sometimes. Go over it a little bit more. And again, I think the notes would have really helped you there. I think the notes would have, that was probably the biggest thing. I think most of the problems come back to having those note cards. So for you guys, all of you can be just sort of aware, just have them there. Just have the note cards if you need them. Okay. I love the way, the especially powerful thing that I noticed, and I haven't mentioned this, but I'm going to mention it one more time, is just the one quote discussion idea. That's something that's really powerful, and you guys can all pick up from that. Not that you all have to do it. Don't everybody do the same thing. It'll be boring. Okay? But I'm just saying, as a technique, it's pretty useful. And it wasn't done all the way through. If you had done it all the way through, it would have been boring, to be honest with you. But it was done in selected segments. There was one part where Evan went for about 5 slides, and each slide was a quote, and she just had a little discussion with everybody, and it worked really well. I'll tell you one quick fast story, which I hope you guys will find humorous, but if you don't, that's the way it goes. But this is a true story of the Canadian military. I'm talking about one idea. This is where this is coming from. And I guarantee you that after this little thing happened, everybody remember this. They used to teach us an acronym when you're running a section attack in the infantry. I was an officer in the Army for several years. And, they teach you, okay, you do something called a GET'em. G-E-T-M. GET'em. Okay? And the way it works is this. So you're going to go and you're going to say attack. Let's see, you got your section here, right? And you're going to attack. There's a trench over there. I'm going to make Evan the enemy. There's Evans in the enemy trench, okay? So we got to attack that trench. We got to take lovely Evan and Laxmi out. We have to do it, we're told, right? So here we go, right? I'm preparing, and you do a GET'em. So you got your 9 soldiers there, okay? And so in your section, and this is the practice, what you're doing as a section leader. So you go G. G is group. Group, okay. Group is who's going to fire. So if I say number 1 and 2 riflemen, I only got 2 guys firing at first. That's group, okay? Execution means how, or when do they do it? You can say execution on my command. You can say execution if you see the enemy get out of the trench, but you give execution order. When do you do it? Okay? T, target. Okay, target. Those 2 lovely young ladies in the trench. Terrible. Okay? Target, right? And then M. M can be usually as my command. I give you commands to do this, right? So we do this together. G-E-T-M. Okay? So anyway, they practice it and go over it and you teach, and then you do the GET'em. You do the section attacks. But we get tired because we've been doing this all day. And then, I'm sorry, Olivier, but there's a French-Canadian gentleman, and his name was Jean-Guy Charron. But the sergeant couldn't speak too much French, and he called him Jean Guy Charlie. But anyway, so Jean Guy calls up Jean Guy, which is really Jean-Guy. But anyway, he says, okay, Lieutenant Jean Guy, okay? You're in charge. So Lieutenant Jean Guy is there, but his English is not so great, right? And he says, okay, what do you do now? And he's forgotten what he's supposed to do, right? And poor old Jean-Guy or Jean Guy is there. He's like, I can't remember. And so the sergeant says, Jean Guy, do again. Remember, do again. He's trying to help him, right? And so Jean Guy goes, let's go, let's get him! But the truth is that I guarantee you, that was a long time ago, over 20 years ago, and I can still remember what the get him was. Okay? And simplicity, which is what we had here and over here, the simplicity makes it very easy to remember things. So I know that you guys are going to remember a lot of what was presented tonight because of the way it was done. Anyway, they both did a great job, and let's give them a hand. Thank you very much.